Rain pelted the windows of the Corvelli mansion, a steady drum that echoed in the empty halls. The wind howled through broken shutters, carrying the scent of wet earth and something older, darker. Memories of power, betrayal, and secrets buried for decades. Adrian Corvelli stood at the mansion's threshold, a black overcoat clinging to his broad shoulders, his eyes scanning the ruin that had once been the center of his father's empire. It had been years since he had walked these halls. His father's death had called him back, but Adrian felt no warmth in returning. Only the chill of stone floors, the faint smell of decay, and the weight of expectation pressed on him. He had been the heir, the one groomed to take the family's power and expand it. But in his heart, he was tired. Tired of violence, of lies, of the endless cycle of fear that ruled the Corvelli name. And yet, something pulled him deeper into the mansion, like a thread of fate, leading him to a place he had never expected. Adrian's boots clicked against the floor as he moved through the grand hall, past the portraits of ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow him. The air was thick with dust and the ghost of candle smoke. Lightning flashed outside, briefly illuminating the grandeur and decay in equal measure. His father's influence lingered everywhere: the furniture, the paintings, the heavy scent of old perfume and candle wax. Then he heard it. A faint sound, almost a whisper, coming from above. At first he thought it was the wind or a loose shutter, but it was deliberate, rhythmic, the sound of someone breathing. Adrian's instincts sharpened. He was no stranger to danger, to hidden threats and carefully laid traps. He reached for the letter opener on the table, his fingers brushing the cold metal, and slowly made his way toward the staircase. The steps creaked under his weight. The sound of breathing grew louder, more defined, and then a small, muffled voice spoke. "Please, help me." Adrian froze. The voice was soft, almost melodic, carrying fear and exhaustion, yet also a spark of defiance. His heart, which he had thought long hardened, beat faster. He followed the sound to a heavy wooden door at the top of the staircase, a door he had never noticed before. It was locked, the wood warped and weathered with age. He tried the handle. Locked. "Who's there?" His voice was steady, commanding. The reply was a whisper, trembling but firm. "I don't know. Please help me." Adrian's mind raced. Who would be trapped here? The mansion had been empty for years. His father had enemies, yes, but this felt different. Personal, ancient. He scanned the door, looking for a way in. Then he noticed the latch. It was old but brittle. With a sharp push it gave way, and the door swung open with a groan. Inside, the attic was small, dark, and dusty. Moonlight filtered through a cracked window, illuminating cobwebs and forgotten furniture. And there, in the center of the room, sat a young woman. Her hands bound by thick rope, her hair tangled and her eyes wide with fear. She looked at him with a mixture of hope and suspicion. I don't know how I got here," she said, her voice shaking. "I woke up, and I was trapped." Adrian studied her. She was fragile, yes, but there was something in her gaze, a spark of defiance. A courage that did not belong in someone so clearly imprisoned. "Who did this to you?" he asked, keeping his tone calm, though his mind raced with questions. I don't know," she whispered. "I've been here, for as long as I can remember. The room, the chains. I can't leave." Adrian's brow furrowed. Chains? He had seen many kinds of imprisonment in his life, but this was different. The ropes binding her wrists were old, dusty, and strangely warm to the touch, as if alive. He knelt beside her and examined them carefully. They were not ordinary. They seemed to resist his strength, yet loosened slightly under his touch. "Stay still," he said, gripping the ropes. Slowly, deliberately, he worked the knots free. As the ropes fell away, she rubbed her wrists, staring at him with a mixture of relief and awe. You freed me?" she asked. "I did what I had to," he replied, his voice low and measured. "But I need to know. Who are you? And why were you locked in my father's house?" She shook her head, tears brimming. "I don't know. I only know my name is Isabella. That's all I remember." Adrian studied her. Isabella, a name that sounded soft, almost fragile, but her eyes told another story. She had survived something. He could see it in the way she held herself, careful but unbroken. "You're safe now," he said, though even he was not sure how true that was. "Come with me. We need to leave this place, or at least find somewhere you can breathe." Together, they descended the narrow staircase, the storm outside hammering against the mansion walls. The house seemed to react to their movement. Shadows shifted, the floorboards groaned, and the wind carried a whispering voice, almost human, almost mocking. As they reached the grand hall, Adrian noticed something strange. The portraits of his ancestors seemed to shimmer, as if watching, judging. One painting in particular drew his attention, a stern-looking man with eyes that bore into his soul. Adrian felt a chill. That was his father. And somehow, Isabella's presence in this house felt connected to that man, to the legacy of the Corvelli family. He led her to a side room, lit by a single flickering candle. She sank onto the dusty floor, her back against the wall, and wrapped her arms around herself. "Do you trust me?" Adrian asked. Isabella looked up, her eyes searching his. I don't know, but I don't have anywhere else to go." Adrian exhaled slowly. Trust. It was not a word he used lightly. His life had been built on power, fear, and careful calculation, not on letting anyone close enough to hurt or be hurt. Yet something in Isabella's presence stirred a part of him long buried. The need to protect, to right a wrong, to challenge the darkness that had defined his family for generations. "You'll be safe," he said again, though even as he spoke, he felt the weight of uncertainty. "For now." As the storm outside raged on, Adrian explored the room looking for clues. There were old books, scattered papers, and objects that spoke of wealth and secrecy, but one thing caught his eye, a small leather-bound journal. He opened it carefully. The pages were filled with handwriting, some neat, some frantic. Most of it was his father's, chronicling deals, betrayals, and hidden enemies. But one page stood out. "The girl in the attic. She is bound not by rope, but by fate. Only one of my blood can release her, but release comes at a cost." Adrian's heart skipped a beat. Fate, release, cost. The words echoed in his mind. Could it be Isabella? Could he be the one mentioned? Before he could ponder further, a sudden movement caught his eye. A shadow flickered across the far wall, separate from the candle light. He turned sharply, but the room was empty. Isabella gasped softly. "Did you see that?" she whispered. "Yes," Adrian replied, his hand instinctively going to his side, where a dagger rested. "And I don't like it." The mansion seemed to hum, alive with hidden energy, as if sensing their presence together. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows, thunder shaking the walls. Isabella looked at Adrian, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think he's still here?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "He's gone. My father is gone. But something else may be waiting." The candle flickered violently, casting long shadows across the room. Outside, the wind moaned like a living thing, and a voice, deep, distant, almost a memory, whispered through the hallways. "You should not have come here, son, nor taken her." Adrian froze. Isabella clutched his arm, her fear mingling with a strange recognition. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. The house, his father's house, held more secrets than he could ever imagine, and somehow Isabella was at the center of them all. He looked down at her, her face pale but determined. Despite the fear, there was a quiet courage there, a promise that she would not be a passive victim in this story. And for the first time in years, Adrian felt the stirrings of something he thought he had lost, something powerful, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. "We'll figure this out," he said softly. "Together." Isabella nodded, her eyes glistening, yet a shadow of doubt lingered. The storm outside began to subside, but in the mansion's heart, darkness and secrets waited, patient and hungry. Adrian knew this was only the beginning. The chains in the attic had been broken, but the real bindings, the ones of fate, power, and history, were only just beginning to tighten around them. And somewhere in the shadows, a presence watched, waiting, knowing that the Corvelli bloodline and the girl named Isabella were about to collide in ways that would change everything. The mansion was quieter now, though the weight of its history pressed down on every wall, every broken floorboard. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the world wet and gleaming under a fragile moonlight. Inside, shadows clung to corners, moving like living things, watching every step Adrian and Isabella took. Adrian had guided her to a side room, but sleep was impossible. Isabella sat on the floor, her arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the shadows as if they could speak. She seemed smaller somehow, fragile in the vastness of the mansion. Yet her eyes, bright and searching, carried a strength that unnerved Adrian. He paced, restless. The words from the attic echoed in his mind. "Only one of my blood can release her, but release comes at a cost." What did it mean? What was the cost? And why did it feel as though the house itself was alive, waiting for them to fail? "Why are you here?" Adrian finally asked, stopping in front of her. His voice was low, carrying the weight of authority he rarely allowed to show vulnerability. I don't know," Isabella whispered, her voice trembling. "I remember waking up here, and then nothing. Just darkness, chains. And now—" Her gaze met his, filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "Now you found me." Adrian knelt beside her. "Do you remember anything else? Anything at all?" She shook her head. "I feel like I should. But it's like the memories are hiding." He studied her carefully. There was truth in her fear, yet also something else, a spark, a determination to survive that even the shadows in the mansion could not crush. "You're stronger than you realize," he said softly. "Stronger than I expected." Isabella looked down, uncertain, but something in his voice reached her, a promise she didn't fully understand yet. Adrian turned to the journal he had found in the attic. Flipping through the old pages, he found references to rituals, pacts, and strange symbols. Things his father had buried deep, things no living person should have touched. One page stood out, its words scrawled in a desperate, almost trembling hand. "The girl's presence will awaken what lies beneath. The house will test the blood of the Corvelli. He who seeks to free her must face the shadows of his own soul." Adrian's jaw tightened. It was clear now. This was not just about freeing a woman from a locked attic. This was about confronting something older, more dangerous, something tied to his family, to the mansion, and perhaps even to himself. "Come with me," he said abruptly. "We need to understand this place if we're going to survive it." They moved through the mansion, stepping carefully over cracked tiles and broken wood. The hallways seemed to stretch, twisting in ways that didn't make sense. Paintings appeared where there had been none. Doors led to rooms that shouldn't exist. The mansion was a labyrinth, and it seemed determined to confuse, test, and trap them. They reached the library, a vast room filled with towering shelves and piles of dusty books. Adrian ran his fingers along the spines, sensing that knowledge, long hidden, could be their weapon. Isabella followed, her gaze drifting over old maps, faded letters, and strange symbols etched into the wooden beams. "This place," she whispered. "It's alive." "Yes," Adrian agreed, his eyes narrowing. "And it doesn't like strangers. Not even its own heirs." As they explored, Isabella found a small chest hidden behind a bookshelf. Inside were more letters, sealed in wax. One, in particular, caught her attention. It was addressed to her, though she had no idea how it had come to be. She opened it carefully, reading the delicate handwriting. "To the one trapped within, fear not the house. You are bound by blood, but not without hope. He who finds you will either save or destroy you. Trust in what you see, and be ready for the shadows that move unseen." She looked up at Adrian, confusion and fear warring in her expression. "It's for me. But how? Who would know I'm here?" Adrian's expression was grim. "I don't know. But I do know this. We are not alone. Something else is in this mansion, watching us, waiting, and it knows more than we do." A sudden noise echoed from the hallway, a soft, deliberate tapping, like fingernails on wood. Both of them froze. Adrian's hand went to the dagger at his belt. Isabella's pulse quickened. "Who's there?" Adrian called, his voice firm but controlled. No answer. Only the echo of the tapping continued, moving closer. Shadows twisted across the walls, stretching unnaturally, as if alive. Adrian motioned for Isabella to stay close. Together they edged toward the source, a tall mirror that reflected the room behind them, yet something seemed off. In the reflection, a figure appeared, cloaked in darkness, watching them. When Adrian spun around, the hallway was empty. Only the mirror held the truth. Someone, or something, was observing them. Isabella shivered. "It's not real, right?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. He knew better than to dismiss what he had seen. The mansion was not ordinary. It had never been ordinary. His father had delved into powers and pacts that defied reason, and now, Adrian feared, they were part of it. "Come," he said finally. "We need to go deeper. If we understand what this house wants, we might have a chance to control it." They descended a narrow staircase that spiraled downward, dust and cobwebs brushing their skin. The air grew colder, heavier. Adrian lit a candle, its flickering flame revealing more of the mansion's secrets. A room filled with old ceremonial objects, symbols etched into the floor, and a pedestal at the center, empty but for a single chain, tarnished with age. "This," Adrian said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is where my father performed rituals. He tried to control something here, something powerful." Isabella stepped closer, her eyes wide. "Was I part of it?" Adrian shook his head. "I don't know yet. But you are tied to this house, somehow, and I need to figure out why before it's too late." They spent hours in the lower chamber, examining letters, journals, and artifacts. Each discovery raised more questions than answers. The mansion seemed to shift around them, doors appearing and disappearing, walls stretching unnaturally. It was as if the building itself was alive, testing their courage, their trust, and their bond. As the hours passed, Adrian found himself drawn to Isabella in ways he could not explain. She was not just someone to protect. She challenged him, asked questions, and reminded him of emotions he had buried beneath years of duty and cruelty. Every glance, every moment of quiet between them carried tension and a strange intimacy, a connection neither could fully understand yet. "I don't know why I feel this," Isabella whispered at one point, her voice soft, almost afraid to speak. but being with you, it feels like I'm not alone anymore." Adrian's eyes softened, though he quickly hardened them. "You're not alone," he said. "Not while I'm here. Not while I can stop this house from hurting you." Her gaze lingered on him, and for a moment the shadows of the mansion seemed to retreat, as if acknowledging their growing bond. But the reprieve was brief. A sudden gust of wind slammed the doors shut, extinguishing the candlelight. Darkness swallowed them. Then a whisper, low and cruel, echoed through the chamber. "You cannot escape what is written. Blood binds you, shadows claim you." Adrian's hand went to Isabella's arm, steadying her. "Stay close," he said. "It knows we're here, but we're not afraid." The air shimmered, and a figure materialized in the corner, a shadowy presence that seemed to absorb light, its form shifting like smoke. Adrian stepped in front of Isabella, dagger drawn. "I don't know what you are," he said firmly, "but you will not harm her." The figure's voice was hollow, echoing as if from a great distance. "Heed the warning, heir of Corvelli. You cannot save her without paying the cost." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Then tell me what the cost is." The shadow did not answer. It flickered and dissolved into the darkness, leaving only the echo of its threat. The mansion was silent once more, but the weight of those words hung in the air like smoke. Isabella turned to Adrian, fear and determination in her eyes. What do we do now?" Adrian took a deep breath. Steadying himself. "We uncover the truth, every secret, every shadow, and we fight, not just for you, but for the future of this house, and our own lives." She nodded, gripping his hand tightly. In that moment, fear and uncertainty were set aside. They were no longer alone, and they would face the mansion together. But even as they prepared to explore deeper, neither could ignore the feeling that the house itself was watching, waiting for the moment it could strike, and that the past was far from finished with them. The hidden staircase descended into a darkness so deep it felt alive. Every step Adrian and Isabella took echoed off the stone walls, their sound swallowed by the weight of history pressing around them. The air was damp, cold, and carried a faint metallic scent, like blood long dried, yet unmistakably present. Adrian's hand tightened around Isabella's, a tether against the fear clawing at both their hearts. "Stay close," he whispered. "Whatever waits below, we face it together." Isabella nodded, her grip firm despite the tremor in her chest. Every instinct screamed danger, yet she felt a strange calm in Adrian's presence. He was a storm unto himself, ruthless, commanding, unyielding. But with her, he was steady, protective. And that steadiness, fragile though it might have been, gave her courage. The staircase ended in a cavernous chamber. The walls glimmered with veins of a strange, dark crystal that pulsed faintly with light, casting ghostly reflections across the floor. At the center of the chamber was a large, circular stone pedestal. Upon it rested a small, intricately carved chest, bound with silver chains that gleamed unnaturally in the dim light. "This must be it," Adrian murmured, his voice a low rumble. "Whatever my father tried to contain, it's here." Isabella stepped closer, her eyes drawn to the chest. "Do we open it?" Adrian hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution. His father's journals, the attic, the shadowy warnings, they all pointed to danger. Yet he could feel that the chest was the key, the final piece in the puzzle of Isabella's captivity. "We have to," he said at last. "It's the only way to understand what binds you to this house." Together they approached the pedestal. As Adrian's fingers brushed the chains, the chamber trembled. The crystal veins in the walls pulsed brighter, and a whisper, low and haunting, filled the air. You cannot break what has slept for generations, without sacrifice. Adrian's jaw tightened. Then we'll face the sacrifice, he said, determination hardening his voice. He lifted the lid of the chest. Inside lay a small, ornate mirror, its surface rippling as though it were liquid. Isabella stepped closer, captivated by the reflection. In it, she saw not only herself, but flashes of another life, memories she could not name, a woman with familiar features standing in places she had never been. This is me, she whispered, fear and wonder mingling. Adrian studied the mirror. No, not just you. Someone tied to you. Someone who may have been part of my father's dealings. The air grew colder. Shadows pooled around the pedestal, rising like smoke. From the darkness, a voice echoed, rich, deep, and undeniably human. Do you think you understand the cost, son of Corvelli? Adrian stepped in front of Isabella, dagger drawn, though he knew the weapon might be useless. I understand enough. Whatever it is, it ends tonight. The shadows swirled, coalescing into a figure that took shape. A tall man, regal and terrifying, the very essence of the Corvelli legacy. His eyes glowed faintly, full of power and judgment. I am the blood of this house, the figure intoned. And you would undo what my father wrought? Adrian's voice did not falter. I would undo his cruelty. I would free her. I would end the cycle of fear. The figure studied him, as if weighing his resolve. Then, with a sudden movement, the shadows surged toward the pedestal, striking the mirror. Light erupted, dazzling and searing, and the chamber shook violently. Isabella cried out, instinctively clutching Adrian. Adrian! Hold on! He shouted, pulling her close. Together they shielded themselves as the light intensified, revealing visions in the crystal walls, the mansion in its prime, his father performing rituals, chains binding someone to a fate not their own, and Isabella's face reflected across time, trapped and waiting for release. This is it, Adrian realized, voice trembling with awe and fear. The binding, it's not just in chains, it's in fate, blood, power, and the house itself. Isabella's eyes shone with understanding. Then, I am meant to be freed, but it might cost you. Adrian shook his head. Not tonight. Tonight, we end it. Together. He reached toward the mirror, and Isabella placed her hands over his. A surge of energy shot through them, pulling at their hearts, their very souls. The shadows screamed in protest, twisting, writhing, trying to hold the power in place. Adrian could feel the darkness reaching for him, probing his fears, his regrets, the years of ruthlessness he had cloaked himself in. You cannot resist the house, Adrian Corvelli, the shadow intoned. It is part of you, as you are part of it. But Adrian met the voice with unwavering strength. I am more than the darkness I inherited, and I will protect her, even if it destroys me. With that, he and Isabella pushed together on the mirror. Light exploded, blinding and pure. The shadows shrieked, a sound like broken glass and dying wind. Chains shattered. The air filled with a warm, golden glow that swept through the chamber, dissolving the dark crystal's pulse. When the light faded, the pedestal was empty, the chest gone, and the chamber calm. The oppressive weight of the mansion lifted slightly, as if a long-held breath had finally been released. Isabella looked around, her expression a mixture of awe and relief. It's over? Adrian pulled her close, his arm steady around her shoulders. For now, he said. But the house, it will always remember. We've freed you, but the legacy remains. And so do we, together. Isabella rested her head against his chest. Thank you for not turning away. Adrian's voice was low, almost a whisper. I never could. Not from you. Not from myself. They began the long ascent back through the mansion, now less threatening, though still filled with shadows that watched silently from corners. Portraits of ancestors no longer seemed hostile, and the wind outside had softened to a gentle breeze. Yet Adrian knew this victory was hard won. He had confronted the darkness of his father, the house, and his own heart, and emerged with a clarity he had never known. In the mansion's main hall they paused. Moonlight poured through the broken windows, illuminating the vast, empty room. Adrian looked at Isabella, his expression both stern and tender. The world outside may never understand what we faced here, but we do, and that is enough. Isabella smiled, a soft, tentative thing that warmed the room more than any light. Then, we leave it behind? The house? The shadows? Adrian shook his head. Not behind, remembered, learned from, and perhaps someday used for something good. But not tonight. Tonight, we step into the future. They made their way outside. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the gardens glistening, dew clinging to broken statues and overgrown paths. The mansion loomed behind them, a reminder of the past, but no longer a prison. For the first time in years, Adrian felt the weight of fear lift from his shoulders. He looked at Isabella, her hair damp, eyes bright with the thrill of freedom. And in that moment, he knew he had found something far more precious than power or revenge. He had found redemption. They paused at the edge of the property, the city lights shimmering in the distance. Adrian took a deep breath, letting the night air fill his lungs. "We're free," he said softly. "Yes," Isabella replied, "and together we'll face whatever comes next." But even as they spoke, a flicker of movement caught Adrian's eye. A black carriage emerging from the mist, drawn by horses that seemed too perfect, too silent. A figure cloaked in shadows sat inside, watching them with intent that was both human and something more. Adrian's grip on Isabella's hand tightened. "It seems the past isn't done with us yet." Isabella leaned into him, calm despite the ominous presence. "Then we face it, as we always have. Together." The carriage halted at the edge of the property. The figure inside stepped forward, revealing features hidden beneath the hood. Adrian felt a chill, but also an unspoken certainty. Whatever threat this was, whatever secret remained, they had faced worse, and they had each other. The night stretched on, quiet except for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the city. Adrian and Isabella stood together, shadows of the mansion behind them, yet no longer held by them. They had confronted darkness, freed a life from chains, both physical and spiritual, and in the process, discovered the unspoken strength that only comes when two souls face fear and choice together. The figure in the carriage did not move closer yet, but the presence alone was a reminder. History is never truly finished, and power, even when broken, leaves a mark. Adrian knew that the Corvelli legacy was far from gone. Yet he also knew something more important. Love, courage, and redemption were theirs to claim, and that no shadow, no curse could take that from them. Isabella looked up at him, eyes shining in the moonlight. "Whatever comes, we're ready." Adrian smiled faintly, a rare warmth that had been buried under years of duty and fear. "Yes, we're ready." And together, they walked forward into the night, leaving the mansion and its long, dark history behind. But the bonds forged in fire and shadow would remain, a quiet promise of strength, hope, and love that could survive even the deepest darkness.